Since I'm completely done with this auction site, I've had to resort to buying from somewhere else. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to show you some of the items that I've been picking up from this seller on eBay while I have made this decision to quit participating in auctions on HipComic. I've mentioned this before, but I really arrived at this decision because of one final interaction there. It was kind of a combination of things. One was a lost comic book that was not included in a recent order. They just completely omitted it from the shipment. They did end up apologizing about a week later. They were able to track the book down and they will be sending it to me. But had I not gone through the shipment, which a lot of times the shipments will sit for many months before I do open them. This one I just happened to open soon after it was received and noticed the book was missing. And then the last thing for me, I am very particular with shipping, trying to unlock free shipping, paying for shipping and tax and all of these other fees that really eat away at the good deal that I think I'm getting on comic books. There was an auction that I didn't realize was a mixture of sellers on HipComic, and this is some of the changes that they've been doing is they've been running auctions from things called like Fulfilled by HipComic, or even something branded like a weekly Bronze Age auction or something like that, where they're trying to put different categories of books together. And I just went on and set my bids like I normally do, and then I realized when I went to pay for my winnings that it was broken up into 3 different purchases, each with their own shipping charge. And I contacted the seller and I said, listen, I get books sent from you, labeled that it's coming from you, even though it's technically still Infinity Comics. And the owner basically wrote me back and said, while that's true, it depends on where the books are located, and I don't know, decided really just to not care about me as a customer, to figure out if there was something we could do, because I was winning 2 or 3 books from one and then 1 book from each of the other 2, and I had to pay 3 different shipping charges. And again, my fault. I'll take ownership and responsibility of it. I ended up paying the shipping charges for all 3. But it's super painful when you win like a $6 book and you have to pay tax and then $6 and some 50 cents or whatever shipping on top of that. You end up getting your $5 comic for close to $15, and it just doesn't feel like a deal anymore. So for me, I think I'm done. I don't know if it's permanent or not, but certainly am not going to be participating and really just kind of removing this habit that I have of going on and checking their auctions regularly and prepping for it. In a way, it actually will save me some time to focus on some other resources. And this is an example of one of the resources that I am going to focus on. It is a seller that I've purchased from in the past. And I have a number of packages here because I have different items that I won. I was originally looking at this seller for slabs, but had some other interesting items that I picked up that I was actually surprised they were put up at auction, but happily surprised, and ended up one that I'm really interested and excited to show you and hopefully put on display. So I'm going to get to the unboxing, open these up, and again, this is an example of some of the other resources that I'm going to focus on in this new year of 2025, getting out of the habit of looking at the auctions run on HipComic. It was a good run. I think I had a really, really solid 2 to 3 years focusing on auction, and really wouldn't have some of the bigger keys for me if it wasn't for Infinity Comics, and I really appreciate it. But it is time to move on from them, and also time to move on from this explanation to show you the comics that I picked up off of eBay. Okay, that was a lot of packing materials, but I ended up getting some raw books, slabs, and this right here that, again, was not something that I think what I was used to seeing listed by the seller on eBay. And the interesting thing about the raw books is I saw a flurry, must have been a couple of hundred raw books that they ended up posting. And it was either for like less than $1 or 99 cents for these. And part of me was like, are you listing these because these are books that you wouldn't have sent out to CGC? So maybe these are less than 9.8 candidates. But I just threw up a few bids on them. They're from creators that I like and so forth. So I'll show you the raw books first that I got for like super cheap. And I picked up 2 copies of Wonder Woman number 15. This is by the great artist David Nakayama. And this reminded me of a couple of books that I would have picked up on pre-order and got them both for less than cover price. And picked up Sideways number 1. This is some really old spec on this character. Feels a little bit like their version of Deadpool, or even a symbiote related character, something from like a Venomverse type of universe. But they just happen to have that listed. So I picked that up for a couple of bucks. And then this Poison Ivy issue number 15, cover art by Souza Micah. 4 raw books. Again, they were like somewhere between $1 or $2, and just decided to pick those up. Was strange. I don't really see raw books that often for sale from the Comic Monster, and so I just threw up some bids. And I was kind of had these items either won or was focused in on it. And so in terms of shipping, I told you kind of the horror story of having to pay for shipping 3 different times under a single auction on HipComic. And one of the nice things, if you find an eBay seller that you like and that you trust and that you've worked with in the past, you can often negotiate on shipping, or at least get combined shipping. And so that's what I did here. This was 3 different packages, yes, but I only paid for shipping twice. They actually opted to send this bigger one here separately, but I didn't have to pay for shipping on it separately, which was really cool. So 3 boxes, 2 separate auction wins, you could say, I guess, but 2 rounds of auctions with their own separate shipping charge, but was able to negotiate that, work with the seller. We sent each other a few messages. He thanked me being a reliable buyer. I thanked him for being a great seller. And that's really part of the comic book knowledge and collecting experience that you build up is, successful transactions and finding those people in the hobby to do business with. And for me, it's primarily online. So it means a lot to me when I can find somebody I trust. Now, I typically look at Comic Monster for good deals on slabs. They'll often have modern books that have hit in the market, and then some maybe variations on that are interesting. I want to show you a couple here that I picked up that are from the same title. And the first one is Absolute Batman number 1. Now, this is a brand new release. It is slabbed in a 9.8, white pages. I totally understand that. Literally came out December of 2024. I mean, that reflects the publication date of the book. So more likely to arrive for purchase somewhere around October. Anyway, late 2024, recently released book, slabbed. Not the greatest idea and strategy, except for me. I read this. I ended up buying. I didn't even record this one. I bought some books off of Midtown Comics because I was FOMOing a little bit on the DC Absolute All-In titles because I'd heard really good reviews and good things about them. And so I ended up finding some for sale on Midtown Comics, and of course they came in let's just say subpar condition. And one of the copies of Absolute Batman, unfortunately, I kind of deemed it my reader copy because it was in such horrible shape. It was a near mint that I think I ended up grading it a 7.5. Brand new book, recently released book. Just ridiculous. Didn't even bother recording it because I just would have been upset the whole time. However, the silver lining on that is it gave me an opportunity to read the hard copy. I typically read digitally, but I figured it's in such bad shape. Let me go ahead and read it as is, and I absolutely loved it. I just said absolutely to describe an absolute DC comic. I realized that I just loved it. I think there's a lot of commentary about it, like, oh, great, it's another take on Batman. Do we need to hear about this again and start over? Do we need a full reboot? It was just entertaining, and I love the take on Alfred. I love some of the surprises with the backstory and the fact that Batman just goes out and brawls. I mean, it was just a fun, entertaining story. And I know that when I finish reading a comic, if I can't wait for the next issue, like I got right online, it was like I need to find issue 2 now, then for me it's something special. And so this is kind of the theme here as well, or these are stories and titles and things that I have really kind of latched onto. And Absolute Batman seems to be, at least for the time being, my current favorite title, and so much so that I picked up a second copy. But this is Absolute Batman #1. This is the Jim Lee cardstock variant, and it is a 9/8 white pages. This one, I don't know if people are just not in love with Jim Lee as much, or just they don't like this particular drawing of Batman. I'm not exactly sure. I know he has Hush 2 coming out this year that a lot of people are looking forward to, myself included. So I hope that the artwork there is of Jim Lee standards. That one you can still find in many places. Most of the Absolute Batman #1s have been sold out. There were incentives. I think there's up to 4th printings now, so there's a 2nd, 3rd printing that you can pick up as well as 4th. So there's a lot of different Absolute Batmans that you can get your hands on. You can probably go to your LCS and pick up a late printing for cover price or less and go ahead and read it, but I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun for me. Really just enjoyed it. Yes, it's a combination of nostalgia, familiarity, another take, a reboot, all of those things wrapped into one, but it is kind of a unique take that I haven't seen before, maybe since Miller's Dark Knight Returns. So it's kind of fun. If you're looking for something that, to me, kind of combines all of the best things about Batman and then adds some additional intrigue to it, I just really enjoyed it, loved it. Now, I mentioned Souza Micah being one of my favorite modern artists. This is another one, and this is also an example of one of the variations that I mentioned. Certainly they have variants, slabbed of books that you're looking for from the seller Comic Monster. But another variant that I love is they have great signature series books. Another artist that I love, one of my favorite artists of this modern era, the run of the 2020s, is Joshua Swaby or Sway. And this is his cover to Zatanna Bring Down the House #4, another late 2024 release. Got a great deal, obviously slab, but also signed by the cover artist himself here. Got the yellow label, and they will have a number of these signature series books, and I feel like the prices are very reasonable, especially if you start comparing signature series prices. It's something that I have analyzed in the past, and I think if there are certain artists that are certainly worthy of the prices that CGC is charging for their signature, by all means, I would say go ahead and proceed and pay for those signatures. But what I don't like is when CGC they kind of just say, no matter who we have, this is what we're charging, and we're charging that like $85 fee, or then additional fees for remarks and things like that. And one of my favorite things to look out for are certainly slabbed books selling at auction for less than what it costs to get them slabbed, or pressed, cleaned, and then slabbed. I love just getting them already in a 9.8. And the same goes for signature series books. I love looking at auctions that are ending, and I have all of these filters saved in my browser so I can quickly go through the bookmarks and access these lists on eBay very quickly. But finding books that are selling for less than the signature price. So I don't know if Mr. Swaby is having a signature series event right now, but you can imagine if you went on there and his price would be somewhere around that $80 mark. And I got this already slabbed in a 9.8 for much less. So very cool. Is doing a number of great covers for DC. He's done some for Marvel. His Black Cat cover is one of my favorites. So I will look at the Comic Monster for some of these item variations, so to speak. Here's another one, another series that I love, that I try to collect as much as I can of, and it's Something is Killing the Children. This is one, I honestly don't know what printing we're up to on this. This is labeled the Archive Edition, and to me, it's just another fancier way or way of avoiding saying late printing. This has got to be like the 10th or 11th or 12th print at this point, but it is the original cover. It does say #1 Archive on the back, and it is signed by the creators, Werther Dell'Edera and James Tynion, late 2024, and it says on the label, reprints Something is Killing the Children, #1. Love the signature placement. Love the color of the gold signature. It kind of is a nice accent to the yellow label, and even the orangish gold font at the top. So really like the presentation of this, and this will sit nicely in my collection of Something is Killing the Children. And even though it's a reprint, it really is nice to get the original creator's signature on it. And this is most likely, again, a book that I would have picked up raw, probably assessed it and sent my 98 candidates in for like a pre-screen, and thinking of the cost and everything involved, was really happy to pick this one up for the price that I paid, and it's already taken care of, slabbed in a 9/8 with their signatures. Now, the last slab here that I have to share with you is another James Tynion story, and what was fun about this one was it is a yellow label, so it is a signed book, but it has, I mean, it's not a remark, it's labeled as an original sketch. And instead of calling this one an archive edition, this one is labeled as a bootleg edition, but again, reprints Department of Truth #1. And it's a Tiny Onion Studios variant with a really cool and unique sketch here right in the middle. So this is Department of Truth #1. And Mr. Simmons ended up putting a unique sketch featuring one of the characters of the Department of Truth in the center. Now, the Comic Monster had this up for auction previously, and in the center was like an alien head. And I thought it looked pretty cool, and I was the high bidder up until the last few seconds. I got sniped, and so that triggers me, and I want to then act on those emotions, and I FOMO, and I just didn't think that they would have another auction come up later with a different character here in the middle. And so I went all in on this one, ended up winning, wanted to make sure I secured it, and then even after this they had another one that I ended up passing on, but they've essentially featured some character or some theme of the Department of Truth, and I don't know if they had one of the woman in red. That would have been interesting to have her there in the middle. Probably would have been the most sought after version that they were auctioning off. But super pleased, super happy to lock this one down and add this one to my James Tynion collection. So while it is a reprint, it's super cool to essentially get some original art here, slabbed and encased by CGC in this 9/8. All right, now the last piece kind of ties it all together. I did mention the original art on Department of Truth, and every so often, not very often, I do treat myself to some original art. I would love to be a full-time original art collector, but I think that is really a massive step up in collecting and budget and so forth, but it is something that I do look at from time to time. And what was surprising to me was that in a recent Comic Monster set of auctions, they did have a few pieces of original art, and I ended up just reviewing all of them, scrutinizing them, and picking out the one that I liked the most, and then again went kind of all in on it. And so speaking of Department of Truth and original art, this is an original page of Department of Truth. Department of Truth #6, page 3, by Elsa Charretier. And this was the one that I ended up picking and bidding on. And I'm super excited to own this. This is from a single-digit issue, signed by the artist down here in the bottom. And there's nothing like owning an original page where you can see online what the finished product looks like, but when you kind of have it in your own possession and you see the details, the line work, some of the blue lines, the pencils in the background, and then the finished inks over, and even seeing some of the ink lines cross the panel border and just some of those little slight imperfections to just know that it was hand drawn and not digitally created. These are the things I just fall in love with, and won't go into too many of my interpretations of the art. But I did end up kind of being fixated on this piece and looking at the staircases, the expressions, and kind of drawing my own conclusions and thinking of my own story to go along side by side with the comic book itself, and just how the character is being led down the stairs by the character in the jacket. I just thought this was a really, really nice piece, and a piece that was not going to burst my budget either. Sometimes original art can be thousands of dollars for a page, and the few pages that I own are all very reasonable and affordable. And it's really, for me, not so much falling in love with a single piece and chasing it down like I would FOMO over an absolute Batman slab. It's kind of the artwork presenting itself in the moment, and when you're looking at the price of commissions and other original comic book artifacts at conventions and signings and everything like that, and what are the costs involved, for me it's like just kind of taking advantage of the opportunity that presents itself and being ready for it. And this was certainly one of these cases with the Comic Monster over the course of a couple of different auctions, and wanted to save these two unboxings to present them together just to kind of show you some of the things that I'm looking at, where I'm taking my budget and applying it to as I'm not spending money on hip comic anymore. And I think this is a really, really nice addition to my collection to get some original art, some signatures, and slabs of some stories that I've read that I've fell in love with. Let me know what you think about these pickups. Do you have any situations where maybe you've been buying from one source and either the source dries up or the source changes how they do business? Where do you go? Where do you look for comics? How do you start up that new business relationship with that owner? Online, LCS, table at a convention? Feel free to share your stories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.